Welcome to Heartfilled Truth, a place for real conversations rooted in Christ, resting in prayer, with Jesus at the center of it all. I'm Chancey Hodges.
And I'm Laura Neal.
Today we are moving on in James. We're going to tackle verses 9 through however far we get today.
We'll see. We thought we'd get further last time, but we just had too much going on and squirreled a little bit. But it's okay.
But it was all good information, I felt like. Good subject material.
Yes.
Just going to have to, stay a little streamlined, I guess, maybe. I don't know.
We'll try to stay on task.
See what God has to say about it,
Yeah. I figure so long as we're talking about God, Jesus, and how to be obedient to Him, none of it's bad information. So you just might have to squirrel with us.
Yeah. Hey, there you go play in the weeds. Go play in the bushes with us. We'll go wander around and see if we find an acorn or two and come back to the trail.
Yes.
So we'll start with 9 and we'll go through 16 for starters, and then we get that knocked out, we'll just keep on rolling from there. So once again, we're in James 1, now we're in verses 9. The brother in humble circumstances ought to take pride in his high position, but the one who is rich should take pride in his low position, because he will pass away like a wild flower. For the sun rises with scorching heat and withers the plant. Its blossom falls, and its beauty is destroyed. In the same way, the rich man will fade away, even while he goes about his business. Blessed is the man who perseveres under trial, because when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life that God has promised to those who will love him. When tempted, no one should say, God is tempting me. For God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anyone. But each one is tempted when by his own evil desire he is dragged away and enticed. Then, after desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is full grown, gives birth to death. Don't be deceived, my dear brothers. Every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of the heavenly lights, who does not change like shifting shadows. He chose to give us birth through the word of truth, that we might be a kind of first fruits of all he created. So there's a few things in there that was kind of repeat of stuff we've already talked about. So this may go actually pretty fast, because we've actually hit on some of what was said in there.
Yes.
But it still sticks to the same theme that we've talked about, that James is talking about, with perseverance and, the back and forth, the double-sided nature, the fence riding, whatever you want to call it, still touching on that. So
yeah, and I really like in there that God's not going to tempt us. Like, He is not going to send us any temptation. Now, He will allow us to be tempted by the devil, by our own sinful nature, but He is not going to tempt us Himself. Like, that's not in His nature. So if you feel that God is tempting you in some way, then we need to look at that and see what's causing you to feel that way. But God does not tempt us at all.
yeah, it's like in the book of Job. Well, everything, if you haven't read that book, the trials of Job, and God didn't do that. He allowed that to happen to Job, and it's all ended up being to His glory, and He multiplied Job in so many ways afterwards. But that's a whole nother study. That's a whole nother. The book of Job can get into so many different things, but I feel that book for sure is one of them that really points back faithfulness, and God will take care of it. But that's kind of what he's getting into here. It's kind of reminiscent to me. And, if in my little cross references here, I bet I could find a lot of other Old Testament references there, but that's really small writing, and I don't want to hold it up to my face right now. But it's there's a lot of them. If you have a study Bible, just looking at a glance from a distance in that tiny little script, I'm counting probably 12 references right there in this section that will cross to at least half will go to the Old Testament. But
yeah. Now, what was it you said about a shadow?
That was in verse, what's all the way at the end, 17. Every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of the heavenly lights, who does not change like shifting shadows.
Right, because God is so bright, no matter what situation He's in, He's so bright there's no shadow. And that's one of the things I wrote down in my notes over here, is that no matter where He's at, God's light is so bright, no shadow can be found. He is all-encompassing. No matter where the light is coming from, He surrounds you so completely that there's no shadow to be found. So if there's a shadow in it, not coming from God.
Absolutely. That's, I mean, once again, fence riding thing, you just, and knowing God's voice, and, James is hitting these things and they all keep coming back to the same subject matter, and it's just really awesome how he does that. And something that I noticed in this was right off the bat in verse 9 is something that really is totally backwards to what we think is the brother in humble circumstances should take pride in his high position. That's not how we're taught. That's not, as on this worldly plane, that's not how it's taught. My Bible down here in my notes that they already had, verses for 9 through 10, it said Christians who experience poverty are to take pride in their high position as believers. Has nothing to do with high position here, it's their high position as believers. And the wealthy believers, on the other hand, should take pride not in their possessions, but the other hand should but in the fact that God has humbled them and then given them godly value system that they can do something with, so that they now realize how transitory in life and wealth are. So God did that for some so they can kind of see the value of other things. And then for the other ones, he just give them a better position just by having them in their humble circumstances.
Right.
And that's just kind of, God works in backwards ways sometimes, or our backwards ways.
Backwards for us.
Yeah. Not in his way.
Yeah. Like, I find that those who don't have anything to lose, they believe more fully. They're more trusting. They're more ready to believe what God has for them. And it's amazing that those who have more, who are rich in worldly things, are less likely to want to give those up for Christ. And those who do, those who give, and those who are able to do God's work with what they have been given are the ones who are celebrated in this passage, right? So he's wanting to show how humility is being found by those with riches are giving those to others and not using them for themselves.
Absolutely. It's more of that. It's God's way is not our way kind of thing, and just kind of has to break that mold of how we perceive and think and how the world works. And then, he just keeps on talking about how, more or less in that nutshell, is you can't take it with you.
Absolutely.
The same way the rich man will fade away, he's comparing it to a blossom that has withered in the sun, and the plant has died away. And just like having all the things, that doesn't make everything, doesn't make it all. It does make it nice in some instances for our worldly self, but spiritually it doesn't very often do a whole lot.
Right.
And then, so, I mean, that's just where he's kind of, James continually flipping the script on our mindset. This is like, athletes talk about mindset training and all those kind of things like that. Being a coach, you see some of that like this. James is writing about it 2,000 years ago.
Yeah.
It's your perspective on what you're looking at, what you're focusing on is another application for this as well. It's not getting hung up on the negative. It's the choosing the joy. It's choosing what can make you better out of all of it.
Right. And that's through the trials and tribulations and finding joy there, because through all of that is where you find Christ. Because we typically in our sinful nature don't look for Christ when things are well. No, but we need to, because that's where the relationship develops, and that's when he's going to find us and know us for when things are bad, that he's going to be more likely to help us out when we need it.
Yeah, it's that, I'm trying to think how to put it. When things are going good, things are going good. That's all. It's just, there's nothing to think about, but that shouldn't be the case. It's like you're saying, God's there through all of it, and we should be communicating, thanking, appreciating, worshiping through all of it. And then, like you're saying, through the perseverance, we get into chapter verse 12 here. It blesses the man who perseveres under trial, because he has stood the test and received the crown of life that God has promised those who love him. It's just right back to it. Perseverance once again. Yep. But one word that can hang sometimes up in mind, what is your translation? What does it say? You don't have your glasses.
I'm up here, you read it.
Let's see. So that was 12. Let me see if I can find this here. 12.
There's a lot of natural light coming in, and it reflects on my glasses and looks really bad. I'm saving you from having to stare at that the whole time if you're watching the actual video portion of that.
Yeah, it looked kind of creepy, not gonna lie, with the over the glasses. There's just no eyes there. Yeah, we don't need that. So the New Living Translation: God blesses those who patiently endure testing and temptation. After they will receive the crown of life that God has promised those who love Him. So they use the word crown there also. So what my little side note here, which I really thought was interesting, because initially you hear the word crown, what do you think about? I mean, what's your first thought when you hear crown? Royalty, absolutely. That's what we all do naturally. The gold, the jewels, the big high, like the Queen of England with the red velvet and all that kind of stuff. Yep. Not at all what he's saying here. My notes really sums it up really well. It's using of the Greek word was the usual term for the wreath. So like a wreath that was placed on the head of a victorious athlete or a military leader. Okay. So if you see in like some of the historical, they see that little partial green that has like the opening here. That was more of the crown they were talking about. Okay. Is you were being victorious, not that you were wealthy, not that you were above, just you were victorious.
I like
that. Is a really good way of putting the spin on it that we're talking about, is using that word crown, but in his language was a victorious wreath. Okay. So there you go. So when you read those verses right there and you hear him say to receive the crown of life, the victorious crown, the victorious wreath, you've made it, you've progressed. Like we're saying, progress.
That's eternity, right?
Absolutely.
That victorious crown is not a physical victorious crown we're going to be wearing. It is eternity with Christ. So, yeah, I love it. Gives me a little chills because I hadn't thought of it like that.
Yeah, I like how he used that there, and then it's just awesome.
See, I've read this like 5 times, maybe 6 or 7 in preparation for this study, and I'm still learning something new.
That's the living nature of the Word of God. It's always
absolutely is
opening your eyes to something different, touching on something different, just because of your circumstances at the moment.
Yeah, or someone else's viewpoint is different than mine, or someone else with more information than what you have, or information from where the perspective where it was written from, and I love it. I could do this all day, every day, if someone would just pay me for it.
Yeah, I don't know if people would want to hear me all day, every day, though, doing this. So I'd have to do it all by myself or in a little group setting.
Maybe, but for myself. Yeah. If somebody wants to, I would totally be paid to learn and just read the Bible all the time.
Yeah, I mean, what's the word I'm looking for? Unlimited resources to research and study. Yeah, that would be all right. Hey, travel. You'd have to go.
Like, I need to go to Jerusalem and see all these places that they're talking about. Like, I need all that, please.
Checking for historical accuracy, all that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That would be good. It wouldn't be a bad deal at all. Goodness. We're chasing squirrels again. Heads up.
All right, back to Jesus here. All right.
Hey, that was Jesus related, though. But I mean,
all right, we'll get back to James now.
Yeah, there we go. And then he goes down here into the temptation, and we touched on that a little bit about what the temptation really is, where it comes from. We Satan is so good at twisting and manipulating. I used to have a devotional just for men, and this one gentleman, I can't think of his name because CDs don't exist anymore, so I can't find what that was, but he would talk about, he called Satan a little lawyer. Okay. And he was like the little lawyer that would sit on your shoulder. Like, you see the old cartoons, Devil and Angel. He said, no, he's just a little lawyer sitting there telling you the loopholes, telling you, is that kind of like what the serpent told Eve? Did he really say that? The same kind of thing. That little lawyer there that is putting it in doubt. Because a lot of times in a court case, all they have to do is put a little bit of doubt in the jurors' minds to get their case won for them.
Is it really that bad?
Yeah. Did
he really say it like that?
Yeah. Is that what he really wants for you? You really think he wants you in this situation?
Did he really mean that?
Yeah, just that little lawyer sitting there. Or he may put the doubt in, well, you're going to mess up again. You're going to screw this up. You always do. You're going to do it again. And that's what he's doing there. It's not from God. It's from the little lawyer sitting there tempting you or trying to drive you back to something that you don't need to go to. Yeah. And so James is hitting on that again. And he's letting them know that's not where it's coming from. So if someone's saying that, you got to watch out.
Absolutely.
And then he goes into the progression of what happens after that. Desire has conceived. So you get those desires. The lawyer's got it stirred up. It's going to give birth to sin. Yeah. And then as sin matures and grows, just like your faith can mature and grow, your sin can mature and grow. Mm-hmm. It'll eventually lead to death. Not necessarily a physical death, it's that spiritual death. And that's what he's cautioning who he's writing to, all the general churches we said, who he's writing to. Whoever's reading this, be on the lookout.
And I think that applies too with our friend groups. Mm-hmm. Like who you spend the most time around, that influences how you behave. Mm-hmm. And if they are people who are non-believers, then you are going to behave more like a non-believer than a believer, because they don't have the same mindset that you should as a believer. So if you are a believer and are spending more of your time with non-believers than believers, then your behavior is going to be more sinful. And that's not to say that we shouldn't spend time with non-believers and sinners, because we have to spread the message. We have to go out into the world and spread the good news. But we also need to have that fellowship with believers to fill our cup.
Absolutely.
Like we have to have that fellowship time, that learning time, the time to study the Bible together, just like we do. We're going to spend that time together to just kind of fill up our cup to get to do that, to be able to go out into the community and with non-believers, so that we can let that cup flow out to those other people. But if you are not filling that cup with good Christian believers, information and behaviors, then you're not filling it with the right things.
Yeah, it's like what's in one of the Timothys. I can't think about it. Being prepared for the day of when someone asks you the question, the preparation of how to answer it about God.
Yes.
And now I paraphrase. Big paraphrase there.
Absolutely. We'll get there eventually.
Yeah, we'll get there. But that's kind of what that makes me think of. Mm-hmm. But like you said, so many people hear who you surround yourself with, and they shut themselves off. They gate themselves in with just believers. Mm-hmm. But that's not what Jesus told us to do in the Great Commission.
No.
It's finding that balance. Now, if you have, a past, say addictions or something like that, you might need to have your balance being more believers spent time than non-believers spent time, instead of the 50-50 split.
Yeah.
That's the awareness, praying for God to give you the wisdom to know how to do that, just like what it said in our last lesson. Pray for wisdom. God will grant it as long as you're with Him and y'all are on the same page, and it's going to be for His glory and His good and for the good of non-believers. He'll give you what you need. He'll tell you the percentages, basically.
Yeah. And you may be a missionary called to a land where there is absolutely no believers, and you are spending 100% of your time with non-believers, and the only believer time you get is by phone or FaceTime, if they have that capability. So it's not a one-size-fits-all, but it's definitely something that you need to be conscientious of.
Yes.
So definitely make sure that you're aware of who you spend your time with, and recognize that the behaviors of the people that you spend your time with matter. And
100%.
And so be aware.
Kind of like that rule of 5 that, people talking about the 5 people you're around is one of 2 things. How you're influenced, as some people say, what people will see you as. So that's, for perception purposes, that's one thing. But when it comes down to being influenced, that fits also. So who are you around a lot? Think about, just first off, the 5 main people, are they a positive influence?
Right.
And so that's kind of what James is just hitting on. Be careful with that.
Absolutely.
And then, down here in 16, moving on, he mentions once again, dear brothers. So if you're keeping your tallies, keep them up. He said, don't be deceived, my dear brothers. Every good and perfect gift is from above. So once again, we're just kind of going back to God's not going to tempt you. It's going to be from somewhere else, another source, but it's not God. And He's letting you know where the good and perfect gifts come from. They come from the Father of heavenly lights, who does not change in the shifting shadows. So we're back to what we were talking about earlier. God's going to be consistent. he's not riding the fence. We don't need to be riding the fence. And, he's just kind of putting it back into perspective once again. This is who we're serving. This is who we're against. This is how this kind of works. And kind of keeping everyone's mindset on track with it, and how to stay on that track too, because he says he chose to give us birth through the word of truth. So through Christ, which was called the Word. I mean, that's mentioned more than once, is that Christ is the Word incarnate. And he says the birth through the word of truth, that we might be a kind of first fruits of all he created. So, that word first fruits is kind of an odd word that we don't really know, don't really understand sometimes. I still sometimes struggle with it because, you can see it in different translations and in different explanations. I'm trying to find what it says here. I lost the word mindset about the word first fruits. I can't find it now though. Maybe that wasn't a different. There it is. Found it. So it has a reference to Leviticus, as just as the first sheaf of the harvest was an indication of that the whole harvest would eventually follow, so the early Christians were an indication that a great number of people would eventually be born again. So that's what he's talking about, was through the early church, that they would be the example of what's to come. So that's what he was talking to the early believers there.
Nice.
Y'all are what's setting this up. If you have a good first fruits, you've gone out and done the work, kind of like in Acts on the day of Pentecost, those first fruits, that was an indication of what was to come. So he was using it as a harvest reference there. I knew I'd seen it. I just had to go find it again. But still, but when you hear first fruits, though, sometimes you think, well, is the first supposed to be better? Not always. Not saying it's bad or good. It's just an indication, a measurement, kind of the litmus test on what's to come.
Right. So it's giving us a forecast of what's coming up next.
Yeah. And not the meteorological forecast that us Okies are used to. It doesn't matter what they say. No, this is a tried and true. Yeah, David Payne's not going to be happy if we start calling him out on this one kind of thing. But anyway, that's a whole nother deal. Goodness. But hey, we got through those and we did pretty good. I think we can start a little bit more.
Yeah, let's go.
So let's go on into 19 for a little bit here. So listening and doing is what my heading says on this. It says, my dear brothers, there's another tally mark. Take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. For man's anger does not bring about the righteous life that God desires. I think we're not going to have enough time to do anything else outside of that right there, because that is just so much in a small little package.
Absolutely.
My goodness. That steps on toes.
That steps on my toes.
Yeah.
I will say that I am so much better than I used to be. One of my favorite things that I tell G is that you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, because you're supposed to listen twice as much as you talk.
Yep.
So use that and see what it can do to help you. It still doesn't always win in my life.
No, I mean, this is some of those right words or the right tone. Just, it doesn't matter what, it bypasses the desire of what you want to do there.
Sometimes my godly filter is gone.
Yeah, absolutely. Just because of our nature. I mean, and don't beat yourself up. I mean, it's like, well, we struggle with that just like anybody else does.
Absolutely.
But the difference is, don't beat yourself up on it. Use it as a learning, a way to develop perseverance. That's another step in the perseverance. The maturing, all these things we're talking about. He's still building on this. As James is writing, we're building on how we become better. He set us up to what his ultimate goal is. Now he's going through the things that we can do to help us. I was talking, my toes curled up as soon as I started reading that, because I know something's going to be stepping on them right there, because I struggle with that sometimes too. I've made it a mission my whole life, just because I think I'm more of my mother's child than my dad's, because I've done pretty good, but it's getting harder as I get older. I did it in reverse. Some people early life, that's when they kind of do that. I think I'm going the opposite direction. I think I'm getting to be that grumpy old man kind of thing in life. And so I'm going the other way. So I really have to be more diligent about this for sure, just because it's getting harder sometimes. And it's just, and sometimes my brain just doesn't process fast enough either. If my mouth's already going, it's like, hang on, let me get all this back on track.
Yes.
But
I definitely have gotten better. As I read more and as I study more, I find that I can tell when I haven't been in my Bible enough, in that my mouth gets better at responding before my brain does.
Yeah.
And so I tend to overreact or react too quickly before my mind processes all the things. And I tend to react and process it kind of backwards. So I process it worldly first and Jesus way second.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have a worldly reaction and I'm like, wait a minute. That's not the reaction that I want to have. That's not the reaction God wants me to have. So how should I really react to this? And I am getting better, not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but I am getting better at the reactions coming in a more timely way and in a more godly way out of my mouth.
Progress, not perfection.
It's definitely progress.
There we go.
100% not perfection.
Yeah, it's how it is. That's that maturing. That's that developing. We're just constantly there. I mean, we're not going to be there until we're in glory with God. So we just got to keep doing our work on there, because, as he says here, anger does not bring about the righteous life that God desires. He doesn't want that for us.
Yes.
He wants better. And, we've talked about that already so much. And you're going to hear about it more because James is going to keep hitting on these things. Like I said, there's a common thread and theme throughout this that we're going to keep coming up into.
And we're going to keep stepping on your toes just as much as we step on our own, because I promise you that there's not a single thing we say here that we're not guilty of. Don't think that we are putting anything out there that we are perfect at, because we're probably the first ones guilty of them. But we are definitely working to get better, making progress.
This is just as much for us as it is for y'all, because, it's making us study extra more.
Yes.
And so that's helping us so we can help you. So it's what's the word I'm looking for? I went blank. It's a collaboration. There we go. See, brain processing's a little slow. So, yeah, it took a second there, but it came. It got there. We got there. Hopefully they'll edit out that dead space for a second.
Maybe. We might leave it just so you can see that we're not perfect. And
Absolutely.
This is just how real life is sometimes.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
Anyway, we thank you for joining us today on Heart-Filled Truth. May truth shape your heart, prayer steady your spirit, and Jesus remain at the center as you go. Thank you for joining us. We love you guys.
God bless.